Back at the end of 2019, Halo Reach was remastered and re-released as part of the Master Chief Collection. It was a long time coming. Bungie's last Halo game was a lot of fun, but it was, how to put this nicely, ugly. As in, arguably the ugliest game in the entire franchise, ugly. But hey, now that 343 Industries has taken care of the presentational difficulties, Reach is just as good as the rest of the series, right? Here's the thing. A fresh coat of paint was never going to solve all of Reach's problems. It might look like Halo, sound like Halo, and play like Halo, but even so, Reach is the only Bungie-made Halo game that runs out of fun halfway through its campaign. Which is weird, right? How can Reach share so much of the same DNA as the original trilogy and still fall short? A lot of fans were quick to blame the bigger additions, like sprinting and the other armor abilities, but as far as the single player goes, most of the issues can be traced back to a single, seemingly insignificant change. Precision was never a big part of Halo's gameplay. There were some weapons that rewarded precise aim, but for the most part, the core combat loop revolved around running and gunning. When designing Reach, Bungie decided that players should be rewarded more for making accurate shots. To do this, they tweaked a pair of already existing weapons to focus more on precision. The battle rifle became the Designated Marksman Rifle, or DMR, and the Covenant Carbine became the Needle Rifle. Both were built to work best at medium to long range, bridging the gap between standard weaponry and full-on snipers. There's nothing inherently wrong with either one. They look great, they sound great, they're generally fun to use. No, the problem with these precision weapons isn't actually the weapons themselves, but how they affected the rest of the sandbox. Reach was designed to be bigger. Wide open levels filled with massive battles between dozens of different friendly and enemy AIs. It was supposed to feel like combat evolved on an even grander scale, and that sounds fantastic on paper. In execution, it did not work. See, when Bungie decided to add more Covenant AI to combat encounters, they were essentially forced to rely on the cannon fodder, the little guys. Dropping a few dozen elites into an arena might sound fun, but in practice it'd be more overwhelming than entertaining. To avoid this, the devs dropped in tons of grunts, jackals, skirmishers. That way, everyone still got to see dozens of different enemies on screen all at once, and the game would still be playable. It could have worked, if not for the new precision weapons. The DMR and Needle Rifle turned the Lesser Covenant into a joke. It's almost sad. Grunts and Jackals used to be somewhat of a threat, but in Reach, they're basically harmless. They'll usually go down in 1 or 2 shots, and you've got a gun that can fire 15 times before reloading. There is no challenge to combat when it's this easy to wipe out entire groups of enemies. And because the Grunts and Jackals make up most of the enemy AI, most of Reach is the same slow, monotonous point-and-click combat that the series used to set itself apart from. As for the other Covenant units, they do fare a bit better, but not by much. Drones, engineers, brutes, hunters, it doesn't matter. They might have more health, but chaining together headshots is still the only strategy you'll ever need. The elites get the worst of it. Bungie did such a phenomenal job with their AI, and yet all of that work means nothing when it's easiest to sit back and pick away at their shields from a safe spot that they can't reach. Speaking of range, remember when everyone thought bringing back the big, wide-open levels from the original Halo was a good idea? Guess what? The DMR and Needle Rifle stomp all over that too. Combat Evolved was full of expansive environments, but the way its weapons were designed meant that firefights usually took place at close to medium range. Save for a few specific set pieces, players were always forced into head-on confrontations, which in turn meant that the combat always carried enough risk and tension to be exciting. Reach features a similar sort of level design, but because the DMR and needle rifle are effective at such long ranges, the maps encourage sitting in one spot and picking off enemies one at a time with no fear of retaliation. The movement and energy that defined Halo's moment-to-moment action is gone, and in its place are literal shooting galleries. Oh, and those few moments when Reach does focus on close quarters combat, nothing changes. The DMR and needle rifle aren't quite as effective as the guns built specifically for shorter ranges, but they're still stupid powerful, even outside of their comfort zone. These issues with Reach's gameplay and level design would be bad enough on their own, but together they feed into one another in a way that reduces what should have been fun into a tedious 6-hour grind. And because the precision weapons are absolutely everywhere, seriously, it's hard to go more than 10 feet without finding more ammo. The safest and most consistent way to make progress through Reach's story is to play in the most boring way possible. It's called dominant strategy. If players find a safe and easy way to win, they'll stick with what works, even after it stops being fun. Sure, there might be other weapons and gadgets to try out, but if the DMR and needle rifle are so common and so powerful and so easy to abuse, why bother? And that sucks, because there's a lot about Reach that's friggin' fantastic.
I can't believe you fell for the oldest trick in the book!
It's definitely flawed, no argument there, but that doesn't mean there aren't still good ideas here. Maybe if those good ideas weren't buried under everything we just discussed, Reach could have been a more satisfying sequel. Still, it's not like the campaign is a complete bust. The problems that plague Reach's gameplay are deeply entrenched in its design, and without a complete overhaul, there's not much the developers could have done. But fans, they can play however they want. Even before PC mods were an option, players had figured out a fix. After all, if the DMR and needle rifle are the source of so many of the single player's problems, what happens if you just ignore them? That's a hell of a lot more fun, that's for damn sure. Nothing makes Reach feel more like a proper Halo game than ditching the precision weapons. Suddenly, everything that made the series' gunplay dynamic and flowing and fun comes rushing back. See, Halo's combat was always about making tiny, rapid-fire tactical decisions. The shooting is mechanically simple, but asking the player to constantly make a bunch of little choices back to back to back keeps it interesting. What weapons will you use? Do you want a jetpack or a bubble shield? Which path will you take? Who are you going to target first? In the vanilla version of Reach, those questions either had the same answer or didn't actually matter. There's no need for experimentation or adaptation, just point and click until the credits roll. On the other hand, ignoring the precision weapons means that you've got to improvise and use everything at your disposal and test out different strategies. For example, remember that shooting gallery from earlier? Better yet, some of Bungie's good ideas finally get to play out as intended. The Brutes get this great introduction at the halfway point, but when it comes to fighting them, yeah, it's more of the same. Take the needle rifle out of the equation though, and suddenly the design makes sense. Brutes aren't as smart as elites, but the way they tank through damage and chase you down really does affect how combat works. It's a clever way to shake up the pace, and once players stop relying on precision weapons, little moments like that start popping up all over the place. Instead of the game's worst aspects snowballing everything else and ruining the whole thing in the process, the best parts of Reach can work together with one another and elevate the entire experience. Look, clearly, this is not a perfect fix. If you have to say, ignore the bad parts and it gets better, about anything, that's not a good sign. Reach has issues outside of its weapon tuning. Passing over a pair of guns isn't going to say, fix how obnoxious some of the characters are.
I'll take that, Six. Not your domain.
Big man forgets what he is sometimes.
She just lost her father. She needs a full psychiatric workup.
She's not the only one.
Lock it down, both of you.
It's also worth mentioning that the DMR and needle rifle were a net positive for multiplayer, where rewarding that kind of accuracy matters most. But in the campaign? Whoa. Halo has always been about run and gun action. Introducing something like the precision weapons could, and did, flip that formula on its head. Bungie changed the single-player mechanics at a fundamental level, but never updated the rest of the design to compensate for those changes. As a result, fans were left with what was, up until that point, the weakest campaign in the franchise. So, please, play through Halo Reach without the precision weapons. There is a genuinely good game here, and Bungie deserves some credit for trying to shake things up. Plus, there's nothing to download, it works on every platform, and takes zero effort to use. Again, it's far from ideal, but that's more than a lot of other games get. It's a shame that the DMR and needle rifle did so much damage to Reach's campaign. But at least there's an easy way to fix it. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching my videos. I know it's been a long time since I've uploaded anything, and even longer since I've uploaded like a proper review. Between the quarantine and upgrading my booth and trying to figure out how I want to approach this stuff at all, it's been a long time, and But hey, I've got a lot more ideas, so if you want to see videos as soon as they go live, in theory, hit the subscribe button, and if you want to help the channel grow, share the video around on Facebook and Twitter and Reddit and whatever social media platform you choose to use. Anyways, thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.